Welcome to Politics Nation. I'm Al Sharpton. Tonight's lead, an explosive new report is raising new questions about Mitt Romney's credibility. It all centers on his time at Bain Capital. Romney claims he left the firm in early 1999 before some of the worst bankruptcies by Bain-owned companies. Yet, a front-page story in today's Boston Globe undermines that claim, saying Romney maintained a role at the company 3 years longer than he's been saying. If you follow the paper trail highlighted by the Globe, it raises serious doubts about Romney's version of events. In 2000, a year he supposedly left the firm which he'd founded, Mr. Romney submitted paperwork with the Securities and Exchange Commission listing himself as the CEO and president of Bain. In 2001, his SEC filing said the same thing. And his disclosure forms for 2002 show he was paid over $100,000 as, quote, executive at Bain Capital. He signed these forms himself. Now, why does all this matter? First, it's a question of character. We have to ask if Romney is distorting the truth about his own record. Second, it undercuts his main defense against attacks on his time at Bain, that he wasn't working there when the company made some of his worst layoffs.
They said, oh, gosh, Governor Romney at Bain Capital closed down a steel factory. But the problem, of course, is that the steel factory closed down 2 years after I left Bain Capital. I was no longer there. So that's hardly something which is on my watch.
But these documents show it was on Romney's watch. He was getting paid over $100,000 as the president and CEO of Bain Capital while it was shutting down companies and ruining lives. That includes 258 jobs lost at Ampad in 2000, the 750 jobs lost at GS Industries in 2001, and the 1,700 jobs lost at Dade Bearing by the time it declared bankruptcy in 2002. These are the voices we've heard on this show. I've talked to people who worked at these companies. I've heard their horror stories about being taken over and taken apart by Mitt Romney's Bain Capital.
They brought us back at reduced wages and no benefits to speak of. Our retirement was gone. We had to pay more for health care. We got put on 12-hour shifts. It was just terrible conditions.
It was just a horrific way to treat people. I would hope that our president would not be trying to create wealth for an elite group of individuals, but would, in fact, be looking out for the best interest of all Americans.
Joining me now is Kaylin Bushers, a Boston Globe political correspondent who helped to write this key article, and Eugene Robinson, Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist for the Washington Post and an MSNBC political analyst. Kaylin, let me start with you. The Romney campaign put out a statement today about your reporting. They said, quote, this article is not accurate. Governor Romney left Bain Capital in February of 1999 to run the Olympics and had no input on investments or management of companies after that point. What's your response to that statement?
Well, they're sticking to their party line that they've gone with all along, Al. And so far, though, they haven't disputed any of the factual information in our article. I think that's important to note. The documents say what they say, and the Romney campaign isn't disputing that. Essentially, what they're disputing is the conclusions drawn by some folks in our article, which suggests that, it's hard to believe for many folks that Romney held these titles, as you noted, continued to draw a paycheck as an executive, remained the sole owner of Bain Capital, and planned to return after running the Olympics. And yet he says he played no role in their investment decisions over that period. That's really what the Romney folks seem to take issue with.
Now, Gene, when you read the article and you have a former SEC commissioner saying, and I'm reading the quote, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to say he was technically in charge on paper, but had nothing to do with Bain's operation. Are you telling me he owned the company but had no say in its investments? I mean, that's a little hard to believe if he owned the company, was getting paid, but he had nothing to do with any of the investments and what was going on with the company.
Well, Al, it seems to me, if you step back, there are really only two possibilities here. Either a lie is being told now, or a lie was told to the SEC in all those filings. And it is not a technicality who runs a company, especially when you're talking to the SEC. This is a key piece of information that you have a responsibility, a legal responsibility to get right. So they can't both be true. He can't have been telling the truth both in those filings and now about his role with Bain Capital. It's just not possible.
Well, in fact, the Obama campaign strategist Stephanie Cutter slamming Romney on a conference call today. Let me let you hear what Cutter said exactly on that point, Eugene.
Either Mitt Romney, through his own words and his own signature, was misrepresenting his position at Bain to the SEC, which is a felony, or he was misrepresenting his position at Bain to the American people.
Caleb, was he lying then, or is he lying now?
Well, that's a good question, Al. There's really not a firm answer to that. One thing I can tell you, though, and this is sort of a footnote in history that often goes forgotten, but when Mitt Romney ran for governor in Massachusetts in 2002, there was a dispute about whether he was even eligible to run because he had been living and working in Utah for the last couple of years. And one of his defenses before the State Ballot Commission at that time was that he took a leave of absence, not a retirement, not a resignation from Bain Capital. That's his word. He said leave of absence, and he added that he had intended to return after the Olympics. Now, that did not happen, but as you noted, it's sort of a can't have it both ways type of situation.
Now, it's very interesting, Gene, because if you have the candidate, all of these technical points in terms of business may be a little boring to a lot of people, including me. But when you have a candidate now that either misled the SEC or is misleading us now, and then when he went to establish why he could qualify to run for governor, he was either misleading them then or misleading us now. You're starting to see a pattern here that is disturbing if you're talking about somebody running for president of the United States.
Well, if you're talking about the pattern, what it looks like is being highly selective about what facts you choose to highlight at any given time. You know, if you look at the bigger picture, though, this is going to continue to be a problem, I think, for the Romney campaign. The complexity and the exotic nature of his personal finances and his history at Bain, and so he says he left, but he was still CEO and chairman. And I believe, obviously, informed as to what the company was doing. How can you have that both ways? The offshore accounts and companies in places like Bermuda and the Cayman Islands, the now closed Swiss bank account, all those things may have made sense at the time and looked a certain way at the time. They can look in a completely different light when you're running for president. And you know, I think there's going to be more of this kind of revelation as the campaign goes on.
Now, Caleb, when you look at the fact that Bain Capital put this statement out, Mitt Romney left Bain Capital in February 1999 to run the Olympics and has had absolutely no involvement with the management or investment activities of the firm. Now, if that is true, then that means that he misled the SEC in the forms of 99, 2000, 2001. And it also means he misled people when he was establishing why he was qualified to run for governor of Massachusetts.
Well, that's the way a lot of people feel, Al. It's important to understand that Bain's contention is, and the phrase that they've used is legacy signatory issues. In other words, there were some Bain Capital entities that were created before February of '99, and their contention is that these existed, you know, after Mitt Romney left. He was in charge, and it was much more convenient, rather than sort of restructuring the management on those business entities, to just continue to ask Mitt Romney to sign those documents. And they say that's why his name continues to appear on certain documents, appearing as the man in charge, even though in a practical sense he was not the man in charge. The problem with that argument, though, Al, is that we found in SEC documents there are references to 5 different business entities that are under Mitt Romney's management control, and those 5 weren't created until January of 2002. So the legacy signatory issues argument could not apply to those 5.
Eugene, your response to that: 5 companies that didn't even exist to 2002, and they would they were under his management. How could that be if he was not there?
Well, I personally think the answer is that he never really left. I mean, he may have left in a technical sense, but he never really left. I mean, here's my question. Why would you sign your name to documents with the SEC that you know are false? Why would you take responsibility before the SEC for things that a company might do if you were not, in fact, running that company?
And
that would be a foolish thing to do, wouldn't it?
Well, let's look at the fact that the Boston Herald article printed February 12, 1999. This is the day after Romney took over the Olympics and supposedly left Bain. They said, quote, Romney said he will stay on as a part-timer with Bain, providing input on investment and key personnel decisions, but he will leave running day-to-day operations to Bain's executive committee. So he himself said he was staying on part-time. And the reason why this is all important is Romney said that we should judge him by what he does at Bain. He defended his record at Bain, and he says this is why voters should trust him to fix the economy. Let me show it so people will feel I'm not misquoting Mr. Romney.
25 years in business, including business with other nations, competing with companies across the world, has given me an understanding of what it is that makes America a good place to grow and add jobs. Someone who spent their career in the economy is more suited to help fix the economy than someone who spent his life in politics and as a community organizer.
So, Gene, if he spent his life in business, he was not a community organizer, yet we find he says that he either is telling a falsehood to the SEC and was just signing off on business that he had no knowledge of, or in fact he was in charge and was losing jobs and was bankrupting companies. This is what he told us to judge him on. Don't judge me as governor. Don't judge me in the Olympics. Judge me at Bain. And when we go to Bain, he gets a little pain.
Well, I just think that all of us basically need to take responsibility for what we sign our names to. And he, in fact, signed his name as CEO and chairman of Bain during this period where he now wants to say, I had nothing to do with the company. Those two things can't both be true.
Well, I think